Hello, this is Stephen Britt, author of Spiritual Snacks. Today, I want to answer indirectly a question from the backlog of people who have asked me to do videos on various things. And this point speaks to the issue that's too big for me to cover. That issue being, why is it that in the New Covenant, I insist on keeping the Old Covenant law, the law of God given to Israel, that includes things like clean and unclean meats, the Sabbath, and the holy days. And it turns out that this question of would you eat blood is critically important. It is a linchpin issue. It might sound like an unimportant question because many Christians might say, well, no, a Christian can eat anything they want because the law is done away. But the apostles didn't understand it that way. And while we don't have a clear black and white written endorsement of every single command from the Old Covenant reiterated in the New Testament, we do have this one very ceremonial sounding law. I don't believe that any of the law is just ceremonial. I don't believe any of it is done away, to be honest with you. I think some of it is superseded by a greater spiritual fulfillment in us, like circumcision, which incidentally is the topic of Acts 15, which is where I've got my Bible open to talk about this issue. So in Acts 15, this is a place where people commonly will point to and say, well, see, some people were trying to compel everybody to keep the law of Moses and to be circumcised, and so they had a conference and said, no, you don't have to be circumcised, you've only got to do 4 things, and guess what? Those 4 things weren't the Sabbath, the holy days, or your clean and unclean meats, and so that's all there is to it. And they think that the law is somehow just this moral imperative to be a good person and to believe in Jesus Christ. But if you read what those 4 things were, it becomes clear very, very quickly if you actually listen to them, not from the perspective of, what things are done away that I don't have to do, but from the perspective of what are they actually trying to get across to these people. You'll see something very different. Because the last 2 of those imperatives are to refrain from meat of strangled animals and from eating blood. And if you want to talk about something like clean and unclean meats, it seems to be the most directly relevant issue here, because this is about what you're allowed to eat or not. And I don't think most Christians, most that I've talked to anyway, who are Protestants or Catholics or what have you, have no idea that there are things out there that God tells them, don't eat this. But it's right there in your own Bible. If you open up to Acts 15 and verse 20, this is being told to the Gentiles by the apostles long after the death of Christ. This is the way it is for us today as much as it was for them then. Don't eat blood. And you know what? This commandment is part of the law of God. It's first found in Genesis 9 and verse 4, I believe. That's where Noah was told this after God delivered him from the flood. And it's found again in several places throughout those first 5 books of the Bible. It's found at least 2 or 3 times in the book of Leviticus alone. It's repeated so many times, and we have it specifically repeated in Acts 15. So what does this mean for this idea that we only need to keep some kind of moral law, laws that make sense about how we treat each other and that kind of thing? It blows it to pieces, literally blows it to pieces. So if anyone asks why you keep these laws that they say are ceremonial, that were done away by the New Covenant, ask them why this ceremonial sounding law about not eating blood isn't done away when all the others are, and how on earth we're supposed to know which ones are and aren't done away, if indeed some of them are and some of them aren't. Because the fact of the matter is that these people are making a distinction that God nowhere makes. He handed down the entire law for his people throughout all time. Until next time, I'm Stephen Britt with Spiritual Snacks. Please do continue to send me all kinds of ideas for videos, questions you might have, things you might have seen that you just want a different perspective on, and I will be happy to oblige.